Hello besties and welcome back to Bookmas Day 2. Today we have my October and my November reading wrap up, and let me just start off by saying we had some incredible finds in October and November. The last 2 months were probably also the most diverse in terms of the amount of genres that I read. So I think that's it. Let's jump into all of the incredible books that I read in October and November. I am filming this video a little bit early, so actually at this point in time, I have about a week left of November. But at this point in time, I have read 9 books in October and November. In October, I read 6, and so far in November, I have read 3. And in terms of genres, I read 3 fantasy books, 1 thriller, 2 romances, 1 memoir, and 2 fiction. So that's 5 genres across 9 different books, which is kind of amazing. I love it when I do that. And so now that the stats are out of the way, we are going to go in chronological order, starting with the first book that I read in October. The first book that I read was Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig, and this is the second book in the One Dark Window series. Does this book series have an actual name? I don't know, but the second book and final book in the One Dark Window duology. I really enjoyed this book. I can't say much about the second book because I don't want to spoil it too much, but in the first book, we're following our female main character, Elspeth Spindle, and she lives in a world that is slowly being overtaken by this mist. And the mist is very dangerous. If you get caught in it, bad things will likely happen to you. And there's only one way that she knows of to rid the world of this mist. And to do that, you have to collect 12 magical cards, and each card has its own unique ability. And so Elspeth ends up going on this journey to collect the cards. And the first book was good. I enjoyed it. I gave it like a 3.75 in that area. But I have to say, Two Twisted Crowns was so much better. I would definitely recommend reading this series just so you can get to that second book because I really enjoyed this story. They're both romanticies, but you actually follow different romances in each of the 2 books. And the romance that we follow in Two Twisted Crowns, I loved. The character development I thought was so much better. The plot I felt like was so much more engaging. Everything just got better in the second book. I gave it like a 4.25 in that range. Absolutely loved this. Please read it. The next book that I picked up in October was the 3rd Percy Jackson book, The Titan's Curse. As you all know, I have been doing my reread of the entire Percy Jackson series, and it was so much fun picking up this book in October. Not only was it very perfect for October because we're dealing with like Greek mythology and Greek monsters, and it just really resonated with me in the cozy, spooky season, but also it brought back all of my childhood joy and childhood nostalgia in, I would say, in a different way than the first 2 books did, because I remember a lot about Percy Jackson book 1 and book 2, but when we get to The Titan's Curse, that's when my memory starts to go just completely blank. I didn't remember a single thing about this book, and the things that I did remember, I thought happened later on in the Percy Jackson universe. So I was honestly pretty surprised to meet certain characters in this book that we met because I honestly didn't think that they came up until much later. And so yeah, it was just so much fun to rediscover the joy of this book and this world because I had forgotten so much. And what I also really love about this book is we're starting to see a lot more in the world building and the build up to where the series is going, if that makes sense. We have like this, of course, this ultimate climax that happens in the 5th book in the series. And I just feel all of the breadcrumbs and that path getting laid, working towards that final finale book in the series. I won't really dive into the plot. Most people are very familiar with these books, basically following the adventures of the children of Greek gods. And it's so much fun. I rated this 5, not because it's like a 5-star. I just rate all of my childhood nostalgia series 5 stars because I can't like rate them for real. It's just too fun and it's too nostalgic and I'm totally biased. Then continuing with the cozy, spooky vibes and energy, my book club in October voted to read Don't Let Him In by Lisa Jewell. And I'm not a huge Lisa Jewell person. I'm also not the biggest fan of thrillers, but I always try to read one in October, sometimes in the wintertime as well. I enjoyed this book, but it definitely wasn't a standout book and not one that I'll probably think about very often in the future. But in this book, we follow Nina, and her husband has somewhat recently passed away. She's grieving the loss of her husband. And throughout this grief process, she receives a letter of condolences from someone who claims to have known her husband in his past. And so Nina connects with this man who says that he knew her husband, and she thinks he's really great. He has his life together. He has a successful business. He dresses really well. He's very kind, all of that kind of vibe. However, Nina's daughter gets really suspicious about this guy. She's like, you know what? Something about him is just too perfect. Something just doesn't feel quite right about this man coming out of the woodworks after my dad has passed away. And we end up getting a lot more POVs than just Nina and her daughter. There's a whole network of characters that end up becoming involved in this mystery. Again, it was very unnerving, very unsettling, but not necessarily thrilling, which I do really love in a thriller. I love a good thrill, but Lisa Jewell's not really known for that. She writes a little bit darker and eerier books where you really can put all of the pieces together as you work your way through the story. She's not known for plot twists or anything like that. I enjoyed this. I just felt that the whole time that I was reading it, I was kind of asking myself, what's the point? There just didn't feel like a greater point or meaning to the story. And so I didn't love it. I rated it a 3-star. It was fine. It was good. I just probably won't think about it ever again. I hope that you guys are so proud of me for this book, but next I decided to pick up Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross, and this book was so good. Before I even talk about the plot of this, I just want to say that I put this book off for an incredibly long time. I think I read Divine Rivals about a year ago now. I read it in the wintertime last year, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It was the best opening book to a duology. I just loved it. And when Ruthless Vows came out, I heard so many negative reviews that I think I got kind of scared. I was like, I don't know if I want to read this. I don't want it to ruin Divine Rivals for me. But one of my good friends read Ruthless Vows and she lent me her copy. And so I borrowed it and I did read it and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. Now, of course, with this book as well, this is the second book and final book in a duology, so I can't dive into the details and nuances of this particular book. But in the first book and just like the general world that you enter when you pick up this series, we're following 2 writers at a newspaper. We have Roman and Iris, and they're definitely rivals. They're competing with each other for one position at the newspaper. And while they're there, they are documenting this war that's going on between the gods in the world that they live in. So they live in a very war-torn, like historical feeling period, but there's magic and gods, and they end up writing to each other using magical typewriters, but they don't actually know who they're writing to, and it just becomes the most magical story. It is definitely a bit on the YA side if that's not your thing, but I just felt like the writing was so lyrical to the point where it really made up for the fact that it is a YA romantasy story. We kind of end on a bit of a cliffhanger. Not a bit. We end on a huge cliffhanger in Divine Rivals, and so it felt really, really good to just continue that into Ruthless Vows. And I loved the way that the tension was drawn out in Ruthless Vows. The romantasy definitely continues on through this book, and just the way that Rebecca Ross wrote it and the things that happened in the plot, I just felt like they contributed to the romance so well. A lot of people don't love that the magic system isn't detailed very well and isn't explained really at all. Like, you kind of just know that there are these gods and they're fighting and we don't really understand how or why. Usually that would really piss me off, but I didn't care. I was just so invested in the characters. It just felt like the whole point was to talk about Iris and Roman. And so I was like, whatever with these gods and the world, do what you want. Like, I just want to know what's happening between these two. And so I gave it a 5 stars. That's like a 5-star series for me. I gave both books in it 5 stars. So that was awesome. I loved it. Every year for Halloween, I like to read a spooky romance book. It's just my favorite thing to do. And so this year I picked up, I have this one actually. And so this year I picked up The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling. This is book 2 in the X-Hex trilogy. Guys, look how good I'm doing. Continuing series that I'm in the middle of. I did a lot of that. These 2 months I finished out some series, I continued some series, and I feel really good about that as a small aside. But yeah, this is book 2. It follows the X-Hex, and tell me why this book was so much better than the X-Hex, and I've read the X-Hex twice. I was like, no, the X-Hex is so fun. It's perfect for Halloween. I'm just going to read it again. No, I should have just continued into the Kiss Curse because I like this book so much to the point where I think it's my favorite spooky season romance that I have ever read. In the story, we're following Gwen Jones, and she runs a witchcraft store in this small town called Graves Glen. And Graves Glen is famous for its fall festival and celebrating Halloween. It's very spooky. The leaves all change colors. They have little like pumpkins. Anything fall that you can imagine is like this town. Gwen is a witch and she's really happy with where her life is going. She ends up mentoring some younger witches who attend the college that's in this town. However, everything starts going haywire when Wells Penhallow comes to town, her old nemesis from college, kind of. They weren't quite nemesis, she just didn't like him back in the day. She doesn't even know if he knew who she was. And I kind of don't want to say more because the book is just so fun, and the thing that I loved about this book the most was the banter. I thought the banter was hilarious. Like, I was smiling and laughing probably 2 pages in. 2 pages in. And that's hard for me to do, to get a reaction that quickly out of me. So I just thought Erin Sterling did an incredible job. These are so fun to pick up in Halloween time. So next year, if you guys are like looking for that, please go read The X-Hex and The Kiss Curse. They're so good, so fun. I rated this a 4-star and it was awesome. As I said in the beginning of this video, I did read a memoir. This was actually, I think, maybe the only memoir that I've read in 2025. Usually I read more memoirs than just one, but this year I picked up The 3rd Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. I love Gilmore Girls. I think it's the best, most cozy, fun, feel-good show ever. And so when I heard that Kelly Bishop had a memoir coming out, it really intrigued me because I really only knew her as her role of Emily in Gilmore Girls. And I loved her for that, but I know now, I didn't know at the time, that she has such an incredible story and history. She goes through the entire journey of getting into show business, being a dancer, getting her breakout role in a chorus line on Broadway, winning a Tony Award. Like, I had no idea. Kelly Bishop was just Emily Gilmore to me. And so getting to hear so much about her life leading up to that point was incredible. And then of course we do spend the end of this memoir hearing about her experience with Gilmore Girls, but I wouldn't say the entire memoir is in any way about Gilmore Girls. It's really goes throughout her entire life and everything that she has experienced, really in reference to the like Hollywood and Broadway, that kind of space. I would say that's where the emphasis of the memoir is placed, and it was so good. Also, I listened to this one and Kelly Bishop narrates the audiobook, and she just has the most fun and recognizable voice and tone, and so it was really fun listening to her story told through the actress, and that was just so fun. I loved this, especially if you guys like Broadway or Gilmore Girls, go read this. It was so fun, and I don't rate memoirs. It just feels wrong to me to rate someone's like life, you know, but it was fantastic. I loved it. So those were the 6 books that I read in October, which I don't usually read that much in 1 month. So that felt really, really good. And now we are switching into November. The first 2 books that I read in November were actually in a reading vlog. I don't do reading vlogs super often just because I love the like sit down videos where I can kind of get into the nitty gritty of a book with you guys. But I did do a reading vlog this month, or last month, I guess, at the time that you guys are watching this, where I read sad books for a week. And that was a journey indeed. I will link that in the description box. But the first book that I read in that video was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I finally did it. You guys have been begging me to read, honestly, a lot of books by Kristen Hanna, but I do feel like this was the one that would crop up in your guys' comments the most frequently. And it worked out so well because my book club for November voted on reading this book. I was like, oh my gosh, it's on my TBR for 2025. I like had to read this book. I wanted to read it because you guys were recommending it and my book club voted for it. So it just was perfect. This is a historical fiction story following our 2 main characters, Vianne and Isabel, who live in France during World War II. And the 2 sisters are very different from each other. Vianne is married and has a young daughter named Sophie. And at the beginning of the story, her husband gets drafted to go fight in the war war for France. And Isabel, meanwhile, is like a really fiery character. She can't like last in a school longer than like a year. She gets kicked out because she doesn't have like a lot of respect for the rules. The two sisters end up on very different paths in the war. We watch them as they learn a lot about themselves and a lot about the impacts that they can make on the world in two completely different ways. And overall, I just felt like this was a story about bravery and family and courage. In saying that, it's bravery and courage embodied in two very, very different ways through two very different characters who love each other and care about each other so much because like they're sisters and they have that sisterly bond. And honestly, I saw a lot of myself in Vianne and I saw a lot of my sister in Isabel. And I feel like that really made me connect with this book even more. I did end up rating this 5 stars. It wrecked me and then somewhat put me back together at the end. Like I can't say that I came out feeling great if we're being completely honest, but I loved this book. I felt like Kristen Hanna's writing was paced so well. It's so well researched. You can just feel it on every page of this book. And so if you guys are looking for a sign to go pick up one of Kristen Hanna's books, I'm going to say that this is your sign. And also it's not hard to read. I think it's easy to look at a thick book and be like, whoa, that's going to be really difficult to comprehend, but it's not. Emotionally, it's hard. I can't even lie, but functionally, you're going to be totally okay. And this was wonderful. I had such an incredible time reading it. If we exclude The Titan's Curse, that's 2 5 stars in the last 2 months, which is just chef's kiss. I love it when that happens. Doesn't happen that often. And then the next and final book that I picked up in the Reading Sad Books reading vlog was The Wedding People by Alison Espach. This is a book that has been on my physical TBR for a few months now, at least since the summertime, like maybe since June. I have been so curious about this book for honestly longer than that. I've seen a lot of book creators talk about it. And I think the thing that intrigued me the most about this book is how conceptually it's incredibly dark and incredibly sad, but it's described as a feel-good book by the end, and I just didn't really understand how those two things went together. But essentially, we are following Phoebe, who books a trip to this hotel in Nantucket, and she is going there for a very specific reason and a very specific plan. I'm not going to say what that plan is in this video because it is not on the blurb. However, it does like come up in the first very, very beginning of the book. But please, I beg you, check trigger warnings for honestly every book that you read, but this one in particular is really intense in terms of the themes and the subject matter. So strongly recommend looking into that. But she goes to this hotel with a plan, and when she gets there, she realizes that she's the only guest staying at this hotel who's not there for a big wedding. And so Phoebe ends up meeting the bride, Lila, and they strike up a very unconventional friendship, and we watch them become friends and interact and honestly so much more that I'm not even gonna say. My favorite part of it was definitely Phoebe as a main character. She also just spoke and thought with a no filter sort of way because of the stakes that, again, I won't say. If you've read this book, then you know, like there are such high stakes for the plan that she has, and so because of that, she just does not care what people think of her, and so she literally just says whatever's on her mind. I really enjoyed reading a character like that. It was so refreshing. I ended up rating this one a 4.25. I loved this book. I think the only reason I didn't quite give it a 4.5 or a 5 is because when I wasn't reading, I didn't necessarily feel pulled to read, if that makes sense. I feel like the books that I rate that highly are the ones that I can't stop thinking about them when I'm not reading them, and this book didn't quite do that to me. But with that said, every time I was reading it, I loved it. Like it was so good, and I completely understand the hype now. So if you're thinking about reading this book, I would absolutely recommend it. It was great. And then the final book that I have read in November so far, I'll probably tell you guys my current read at the end of this video, but the last book that I have completed to date is Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This has been selected in several TBRs and I finally did it. This was picked in my November TBR, I think, right? I'm pretty sure. This was chosen in my November TBR and we did it. This is the second book in the Rose Hill series. It's like a small town romance series where we are following a bunch of interconnected characters and romances. And in this book, we have our main character, Skylar, and she is a famous singer. She's a celebrity, but she's having a lot of issues with the media. And so she kind of just leaves LA. She's like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta go do something else, try doing things my own way. And so she ends up up going to Rose Hill, the tiny town where this series takes place, to record her own music and her own album with Ford, who is the love interest in the first book in this series. And he's like a famous producer, but he lives in a small town. Why they all are going to this teeny tiny town, I couldn't really tell you, but it makes for good plot. And when Skylar is in this small town, she meets West, and he's kind of like a used to be bad boy. He's not really a bad boy anymore, but he had that reputation when he was younger. He is a single dad with 2 kids, and he works on a ranch and like takes care of a bunch of horses. And he's a really, really sweet, fun character. And I gotta be honest, I was so pleasantly surprised by this book. I didn't really like book 1 in the Rose Hill series. So actually really enjoying book 2 was really pleasant for me because again, I wasn't really expecting that. This was also my before bed book. So I've been reading like a few chapters of it every night before going to bed for so long. And I finally got around to finishing it this month. It was just a very calm palate cleanser, extremely spicy, could be more depth, not perfect writing, but you know, that's not why I pick up these books. And I do think that's something important to bear in mind. I just found the plot and the romance so much more engaging in this book than the first book in this series. And so yeah, I gave it a 3.75. Really, really enjoyed it. Not perfect by any means. I definitely prefer like a deeper, more complex, more emotional, less spice type of romance if we're talking about my perfect romance. More tension. But all in all, Skylar was a great main character. West was a great love interest. I liked the celebrity vibe. I've never really read that before, surprisingly. So yeah, this was great. 3.75. And then the last book that I just wanted to throw in here and show you guys what I'm currently reading. This is not a review, but I think some of you will be very excited, is I am currently reading Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. And this one was also on my November TBR. And so I'm really trying to get through this one before the end of the month. I'm really enjoying this, which is kind of a big shock because I felt kind of bored to tears when I read the first one, but I'm trying audiobook and reading this one. And I'm like actually loving it. I'm having so much fun. So I'm like, oh, maybe I got an audiobook the first one. I'm having so much fun. So yeah, this is not a review. I don't have any idea what I think of it right now. I'm about a third of the way through it, but I'm having a blast and it's giving like perfect fall, winter, cozy energy. So big fan of this so far. Those are all of the books that I read in October and November, plus a lot. I read a lot on my Kindle this month. If you guys made it all the way to this point in the video, comment down below the little ice skate emoji so I know who made it all the way here. And I think that's it for me. I will see you guys again for Bookmas in 2 days. This is so fun. I love uploading so much. It's a lot of work, but I'm having a lot of fun. So don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you guys are having a great day and a great reading month, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.